Let's continue on with lesson 314, which is fractional problems part 2. Go ahead and grab your whiteboard. We're going to do a little warm up with some basic division problems and extended division problems. So would you number 1 to 3 in your whiteboard and solve each problem? 32 divided by 4, 320 divided by 4, and 3,200 divided by 4. Pause your video, write down the answer. So number 1, 32 divided by 4 is 8. (32 divided by 4 is 8 with 1 0 popped on. 32 divided by 4 is still 8 with 2 zeros popped on. Remember, when you have a 0 on each side, they cancel each other out. So go ahead and solve for these 3 division problems. Pause your video, remember. 810 divided by 90 is 9. Let me just show you how this works. 90 times 9. 9 times 9 would be 81 with 1 0 behind it. 2 zeros cancel out these 2 zeros. 81 divided by 9 is still 9 with 1 0 added on. 3 zeros cancel out 3 zeros here. 81 divided by 9 is 9 with 1 0. Go ahead and number 1 to 3 again. Pause your video and solve these extended facts. These 2 zeros cancel out those 2 zeros. 42 divided by 7 is 6 with 1 0. 2 zeros cancel out those 2 zeros. 63 divided by 9. In other words, 9 times what gives me 63? It's another way to think of it. 7 with 2 zeros. And 3 zeros cancel out 3 zeros. 48 divided by 6 is 8 with 2 zeros added on the end. Go ahead. We're going to solve the problems that you see here. If it is a multiple of that number, it makes it really easy to do. So if I just look at this very first problem, 1/2 of 8, you should be able to take a half of any number. Remember, of means just to multiply, so 2 times what would give me 8? 4. Another way to think of that is take half of, or divide it in half of 8. Sometimes it's not so easy. We have numbers that are not multiples of it, and therefore we have to think of it a little bit differently. So if we take 1/3 of 12, well, watch this. I know this would, if I take 3s, 12 is a multiple of 3, so we're going to have a whole number that makes it fairly simple. Of means to multiply, so 3 times what would give me 12? Or if I were going to divide 12 into 3 equal groups, how many would be in each group? Well, there would be 4. But sometimes that doesn't work as neat. So if you look at 13, if we find 1/3 of 13, 13 is not a multiple of 3. So if I think of it in terms of pictures again, if I have 13 things, I'm going to divide them into groups of 3. I would go ahead and go 1, here's my groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And now I don't have another one to put into each of the groups. So then what I have to do is break it into thirds. 1/3 goes there, 1/3 goes there, 1/3 goes there. So I get 4 and 1/3 in each group. Now, if I were going to do 1/3 of 14, here were my 13. Remember, I had to take that 13th one and divide it up. If I have to do it with 14, I would do the same thing because I don't have enough to put 1 in each group because my next multiple would be 15. So a third goes here, 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 and a third goes here. So if I have 14, it would still be 4 wholes plus 2/3, 1/3, 1/3, 2/3 to each of those groups. So sometimes it's not always an even whole number. So if we look at 1/4 of 9, one way to write this too is to think of it as division, right? 9/4. 1/4 of 9 would be 9/4. Now, we know how to take an improper fraction and change it to a mixed number, right? How many 4s are there in 9? Well, there's 2 with 1 left over. Remember, the remainder goes on top, the divisor goes on the bottom. So 1/4 of 9 would be 9/4, or another way to say that would be 2 1/4. So 1/5 of 7 on your whiteboard, would you please write it as a fraction? Well, we're taking 7 and dividing into fifths. Think of fraction as division. How many 5s are there in 7? We know our answer is greater than 1 because our numerator is larger than our denominator. So how many 5s are there in 7? Well, there's 1 whole. Our remainder goes on top. Our divisor goes on the bottom. So 7/5 is the same as 1 2/5. Why don't you try the third one on your whiteboard? Go ahead and look at the examples that you have and solve for 1/10 of 23 on your whiteboard. I'm going to stop, pause the video for a moment. You do the same. So 1/10 of 23 would be taking 23 and dividing into 10 equal groups. 23 divided by 10 goes in there twice. Oops. 3 is my remainder, so 2 3/10. So 23/10 or 2 3/10. Go ahead and move on to journal page 108. We are going to solve fraction of problems, draw pictures when needed, more fraction of problems. Solve each problem. You can use drawings to help. Be sure to check that your answers make sense. So if we have $5, go ahead and draw the dollars, and we're dividing them in half. What's half of $5? Well, one way to say it is to say 5 halves. We're taking 5 and dividing it into 2. Or we can say these 2 equal 1, these 2 equal 1 whole with 1 half left over. So 5 halves is the same as 1 1/2. Number 2, what is 1/5 of 12? 1/5 of 12. So let's take 12 and divide it into 5 equal groups. So I'm going to make squares, and I'm going to put them into 5 equal groups. So 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. That's 5 squares, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now here's where I cannot put another square into each of those 5 equal groups. So I have to take my last 2 boxes, squares, and divide them into fifths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to take and put 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, and do the same with that one. So that you're each going to get 1/5 of this square and 1/5 of this square. So all together, they would get 12/5, or 2 whole, and then 1/5 and 1/5 of that one, so 2/5. So 12/5 is the same as 2 and 2/5. What is 1/4 of 2? Well, 1/4 of 2, if we're putting it into 4 equal groups and we only have 2 whole things, our answer is going to be less than 1 whole. Less than 1 whole. We knew this one was going to be more because we had 12 things and we were only putting them into 5 equal groups. So I'm going to take 2, let me make those a little bit smaller, 2 whole things and divide them into fourths. Draw this picture with me. So another way to say this is 2 fourths. We're always going to put this as the denominator. Denominator, denominator. So just remember, the bottom of the denominator, when we're taking a fraction of a number, is going to always be the denominator when you write it as a fraction. So 2 fourths, or we could say 1/2. Number 4, what is 1/8 of 6? Okay, so we have the whole number 6, right? We're dividing into 8 groups. So will that answer be more or less than 1 whole? I'm going to go back for just a moment and just show you these. These would all be fraction problems that are less than 1 whole. And the reason I know is 3 whole things divided into 4 groups, less than 1. 4 whole things divided into 6 groups, they have to be less than 1. 2 whole things divided into 5 equal groups, 5 is bigger than 2, so it's going to be less than 1. So just keep that in mind as you're working. So we have 6 things into 8 groups. We know our answer is going to be less than 1 whole. So I can write my fraction of 6/8. My eighths never changes. My denominator in each case always stays the same. So if you're wondering which one should go on the top, which one should go on the bottom, the denominator never changes. If it's eighths, the answer has to be eighths. So another way to say this, and another way to do this is I can factor out a common denominator or a common factor. So they each have a common factor of 2. If I think about my factors of 6 and my factors of 8, another way to say this would be 3/4. Number 5, Frederick went to a farmer's market and bought 8 quarts of strawberries. He wants to keep 1/3 of the strawberries and give away the rest. How many quarts of strawberries will he keep? Okay, so remember, our denominator is never going to change. Thirds, 8/3. So if we have 8 quarts and we're only dividing it into 3 groups, will that answer be more or less than 1? More than 1. So right away, we can write 8/3 as our answer. So we would say, how many 3s are there in 8? There's 2 of them. And then our remainder goes on top, our divisor goes on the bottom. But let's draw it as a picture. 8/3 is the same as 2 and 2/3. So if we take the 8 quarts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we divide each one into thirds, he wants to keep 1/3 of the strawberries, so 1/3 of each. Go ahead and shade yours in as well. Remember, if you ever need additional time, just pause the video. So this would be 1/3, 2/3, 3/3, 4/3, 5/3, 6/3, 7/3, 8/3. And together that would be 2 and 2/3. Number 6, Shelby has a 4-pound bag of mixed nuts. She wants to put 1/6 of the nuts at each of the 6 snack tables at the fundraiser. How many pounds of nuts should she put on each table? Okay, she has 4 pounds, 6 1/6. She's going to divide into 6. So will it be more or less than a pound per table? 4 pounds, 6 groups. Less than a pound. So we would write 4/6. Remember, the denominator never ever changes. So if you're wondering, do I put 4 in the bottom or 6? The 6 never changes. So we know 4/6. So if we take and divide those 4-pound bags into 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1/6 at each of the tables. So table 1's 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6. The next table, the purple table, gets 1/6, 1/6 of each pound bag. Then the next table, the yellow table, gets 1/6, 1/6, 1/6 of that, 1/6 of that. You get the idea, right? So the blue table would get 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6.